What would you do if your whole life felt like a shadow of someone else's success? What if suddenly everything you've known was turned upside down? Alice's life was predictable, calm, steady, and focused on work. But after an accident, a heartbreaking revelation about her sister, and her family's betrayal, everything began to change. Now Alice is determined to take control of her life, her future, and her independence. Stay tuned to see how she redefines success and embraces a new season of her life. My channel's struggling, so if you're intrigued, please comment 1 to help me out. Thank you for watching, I appreciate it. Subscribe to see how it ends, and I wish you all good health. My daily routine always begins the same way. At 6 o'clock in the morning, the shrill sound of my alarm reverberates through the quiet, tree-lined streets of Brooklyn Heights. As I open the curtains, the Manhattan skyline rises before me, shrouded in the soft haze of the morning. From my room on the 3rd floor of this brownstone, I take in the view. The towering skyscrapers of the city never fail to offer a quiet kind of peace, grounding me in the stillness of the early hours. My gaze drifts to the silver frame on my vanity. It's last year's Christmas photo, a family portrait. My sister Bethany is front and center, with our proud parents smiling beside her. And there I am on the edge, Alice Wilson, with my usual reserved smile. Let's do our best today. This small ritual of speaking to myself in the mirror is something I've done for years. After a quick shower, I slip into my navy pantsuit and carefully style my brown hair. As a senior manager at a prominent accounting firm, every detail of my appearance must be immaculate. By the living room window, my cherished herb plants sit in a neat row of thyme and rosemary, their fragrance filling the air and offering me little moments of joy. On weekends, I spend hours here reading, the sound of Bach softly playing in the background. Early as usual, dear. Mrs. Martha, the elderly neighbor from across the street, is tending to her garden. In her 70s, she's become like a grandmother to me. Good morning, your garden looks lovely today. I pause as I approach her. Thank you, Mrs. Martha. Oh, did you hear about Bethany? She's doing so well on Wall Street. Your parents must be so proud. I stop for a moment, the words catching in my throat. My sister has become a celebrated investment analyst, her career soaring, her income far surpassing mine. She lives in a luxury Manhattan apartment, draped in designer clothes, always in the social media spotlight. Yes, indeed, I respond, forcing a smile, though my chest tightens with a familiar knot. From childhood, it was always Bethany who received our parents' praise. No matter what I achieved, good grades, promotions, or accomplishments, Bethany's smaller wins were always celebrated with more enthusiasm. Even my acceptance to graduate school felt like it paled in comparison to her high school report card. As I board the subway, I'm reminded of yesterday's family dinner. These Sunday dinners have been a tradition, one that my mother insists on maintaining. Bethany, darling, tell us about that wonderful news again! Mother was practically glowing with pride as she served the roast beef. Oh, it's nothing special, just an award nomination, Bethany said, playing it modest, though her eyes sparkled with a pride that couldn't be hidden. Then my father chimed in. Alice, why don't you follow Bethany's example and be more proactive? I nodded silently, my stomach sinking. My promotion, the new projects I'd successfully launched, none of it seemed worthy of a mention. At the office, I'm immersed in the familiar bustle of corporate audits, tax return reviews, and staff supervision. Steady, reliable, honest, that's my motto, my mantra. Miss Wilson, could you check these calculations? Olivia, a new hire, approaches my desk hesitantly. She always tells me I'm a strict but fair supervisor. Of course, dear, have a seat. As I review the numbers, I glance out the window. Somewhere in those towering Manhattan buildings, Bethany's office sits. For just a fleeting moment, uncertainty flickers across my face, but I quickly push it aside. This is my life, peaceful, stable, predictable, yet something is missing. But little did I know, this routine, this life was about to be dramatically shaken in a way none of us could have predicted. At 8 o'clock on the evening of February 15th, I was hurrying toward the subway station from my office on Atlantic Avenue. Looking up from under my umbrella, I saw the Brooklyn Bridge creating an ethereal scene illuminated by streetlights through the rain. the final check of tomorrow's audit report, while organizing tomorrow's schedule in my head. I approached the crosswalk. As usual, the light was green. I tilted my umbrella slightly to check the subway entrance on the other side. Suddenly, headlights came rushing from the left at an alarming speed. The sound of an engine revving, tires sliding on the wet pavement. There wasn't even time to scream. A violent impact. My body was lifted into the air, then thrown into darkness. Just before losing consciousness, strangely enough, I thought I heard my mother's voice. "Alice, why can't you be more like Bethany?" White ceiling, the smell of antiseptic, regular machine beeps. "Miss Wilson, can you hear me?" My eyelids felt heavy as my vision slowly came into focus. I saw a doctor in a white coat looking down at me with concern. "You've been in an accident and you're now at New York Presbyterian Brooklyn Methodist Hospital. It's been about 2 hours since you were brought in unconscious." A nurse was adjusting sensors on my body, recording vital signs on the monitor. The whole scene felt like it was happening in a distant world. When I tried to move, sharp pain shot through my body. My right leg was immobilized in a heavy cast, and the pain in my chest and abdomen made even breathing difficult. My face was bandaged where I apparently had lacerations. "The X-rays and blood tests are back," the doctor continued. "Surgery on the fracture is essential tonight. We may need to address internal bleeding during the operation as well. We're planning for about 3 hours of surgery. Don't move. You have full-body contusions, a broken right leg, and several lacerations. Surgery is necessary tonight." "My family?" "Yes, we've contacted your emergency contacts." I felt a slight relief at those words. Surely my parents would come at a time like this. Just after the nurse left after checking my phone rang. It was Mother. "Alice?" "Mom, I've been in an accident. Yes, the hospital called, but listen." Mother's voice became hesitant. "Today is Bethany's award ceremony. She's receiving the Analyst of the Year award. It's a very important ceremony, so..." For a moment, I couldn't comprehend what she meant. "We can't come to the hospital today because we have to attend the ceremony, but I need surgery." As my voice trembled, Father took the phone. "Alice, this is crucial for Bethany's career. There are nurses there, aren't there?" Suddenly, I felt all strength leaving my body. "I understand," I managed to reply, fighting back tears. After the call ended, silence returned to the hospital room. Only the rhythmic sound of the foredrip remained. I turned on the TV with the remote the nurse had brought. As if fate was mocking me, there was my sister's award ceremony being broadcast. The glamorous Cipriani Wall Street. Bethany standing on stage in a dazzling dress under sparkling chandeliers. Our parents in the front row, their faces beaming with pride. They all look so happy while I'm here alone. I couldn't even wipe away the tears streaming down my cheeks. The arm with the 4 wouldn't move as I wanted it to. Outside the window, a light rain continued to fall. Manhattan's lights twinkled in the distance like phantoms. Alone in the dim hospital room, illuminated by the cold blue light of the TV, I kept watching my family's smiling faces, time until surgery. My watch mercilessly ticked away the seconds. Something deeper than physical pain was constricting my heart. Nurse Maria quietly entered the room. Seeing my state, she immediately turned down the TV's volume. "Will your family be here soon?" she asked gently. When I shook my head, Maria nodded in understanding. "I'll start the pre-medication now. When you feel sleepy, just rest." As she added the medication to my 4, I stared at the ceiling. For the first time, I was looking objectively at my life. Lived dedicated to work, my relationship with my parents and sister, the emotions I'd always suppressed, and the true meaning of family. "Alice, we're ready for your pre-op preparations." As my bed started moving toward the operating room, the fluorescent lights in the hallway passed overhead like scenes from a movie. In that light, I made a decision to make this surgery, this night, the beginning of a new life. When I awoke from anesthesia, the window showed the dim light of dawn. The night nurse told me the surgery had been successful. Though the pain was still there, I stared at the ceiling through a numbed heaviness. With hazy consciousness, the persistent ringing of my cell phone broke the silence. 7:15 in the morning. The screen showed Mom. Remembering last night, I hesitated for a moment, but picked up. "Hello?" Alice, where are you? Still at the hospital? Mother's voice rang out at an unusually high pitch. I could hear Father's agitated voice in the background. Yes, the surgery is over. We need to see you right now, Bethany. Bethany! Mother's voice broke off and I could hear her sobbing. Father took the phone. We're coming there now. There's something important we need to discuss. But visiting hours? That doesn't matter. I instinctively held the phone away from my ear at Father's shout. I'd never seen him so distraught before. I could make sense of the situation. Shocking news began playing on the hospital room TV. Breaking news. Major investment firm uncovers massive fraud. Wall Street rising star. Bethany Wilson arrested. The screen flashed with the image of my sister, Bethany, her radiant smile from last night's ceremony replaced by the cold, harsh reality of her being led away by police. Still in her designer suit, she covered her face with both hands. The suspect is alleged to have misappropriated approximately $20 million in client funds for personal use. Evidence suggests the funds were spent on luxury cars, overseas travel, jewelry collections, and other lavish personal expenses. I felt a chill creep down my spine as my mind went blank. Last night's award ceremony, that smile, that radiance, had it all been a lie? The hospital room door burst open. My parents rushed in, despite it being before visiting hours. Mother hadn't even removed her makeup, and her eyes were swollen from crying. Father had lost his usual dignified composure, his shoulders slumped. Alice, please help Bethany. Mother rushed to my bedside, grabbing my hand with trembling fingers. The bail is set at $3 million. We're putting up our assets as collateral, but it's not enough, Father said, his voice calm but urgent. We need to use your savings. Yeah. My savings? I repeated quietly. The $1.8 million I had worked for accumulated over years of diligent work as a senior manager. Living modestly money I had saved bit by bit for my future security? We can't let Bethany go to prison, Mother cried out, her voice breaking. She's still young. Don't let this ruin her life. If you give us all your savings, we can manage the rest somehow, Father continued, his tone authoritative, as if I had no choice in the matter. I looked up at the ceiling. The sound of the IV drip seemed unusually loud in the silence that followed. Why didn't you come to be with me during my surgery last night? I asked, my voice soft. We told you Bethany's award ceremony, which turned out to be a fraud too. Mother stumbled over her words. All this time, Bethany's success was all that mattered. When I got my degree, when I was promoted, you showed almost no interest. And last night, you chose an awards ceremony over your daughter facing surgery. This is not the time for such talk. Father's voice raised in irritation. Are you going to abandon your sister? At that moment, Nurse Maria entered, her presence a calm interruption. I'm sorry, but she needs to rest. My parents were reluctantly ushered out, but before they left, Mother turned back. Think about it. Bethany's life is at stake. The room fell into silence once again. I let out a deep sigh. Through the window, New York City was beginning its usual hustle. As Maria took my blood pressure, she spoke softly. Your body and mind's recovery is what's most important right now. I nodded, absorbing her words. The thoughts I had long harbored about my family, about what I had endured for years, were demanding a major decision. But perhaps now, this moment, was the time to focus on my own healing. The TV continued to broadcast the news about my sister's arrest. The truth hidden behind the facade of the brilliant investment analyst was gradually coming to light, and in my heart, something was definitely beginning to change. 2 weeks later, I was riding the elevator up to my parents' Manhattan apartment on the Upper East Side. Leaning on my cane, though the pain in my leg had eased, I was still far from full recovery. James Murphy, my company's legal counsel and trusted advisor, stood quietly beside me. I had decided that legal expertise would be necessary for today's discussion. Are you ready? Murphy asked in a gentle voice. I nodded slightly. Mother opened the door. She, who usually maintained perfect makeup and hair, didn't even try to hide her exhausted expression. Alice, her voice mixed faint hope with anxiety. Father was waiting in the living room. Through the large window's Central Park scenery was visible the view from this luxury apartment, once the family's pride, now felt somehow empty. "So you brought a lawyer," Father said irritably. "Yes, this is also a legal matter," I answered calmly. I placed my cane beside the sofa and slowly sat down. "Here's the report from Bethany's defense team." Father picked up the documents on the table. "The total amount of misappropriated funds may be more than initially reported. It could reach 25 million. Mother let out a small cry. "But if we can just make bail." I looked straight into Mother's eyes. "Paying bail won't make Bethany's crimes disappear. She needs a chance to rehabilitate. Surely you understand." Mother cried out emotionally. "Do you understand how I felt, waiting alone for surgery in my hospital bed?" My voice trembled slightly. Heavy silence dominated the room. "Alice, let's put the past behind us," Father said in a conciliatory tone. "This is a time for family to unite." "Family?" A bitter smile involuntarily crossed my face. "Did you ever once make me feel like family?" I tried to stand up and pain shot through my leg, but this time I could bear it. "You rejoiced in Bethany's flashy success while ignoring my steady efforts. You were intoxicated by your daughter's false glory and chosen award ceremony over your daughter's surgery, and now you dare speak of a family. You've become such a cold person." Mother's eyes welled with tears. "Are you going to abandon your sister?" I responded in a quiet but firm voice. "Abandon? I'm the one who's been abandoned all along." Murphy took out some documents. "Miss Wilson let me explain the bail situation from a legal perspective." Father leaned forward. "What are you getting at?" "At this point, Bethany Wilson's alleged crimes go beyond simple misappropriation of funds," Murphy began explaining calmly. "There are also suspicions of organized investment fraud, document forgery, and tax evasion. Even if bail is paid, there's an extremely high likelihood of additional charges." I added furthermore, paying bail would invite scrutiny into the source of my savings. Bank and tax authority investigations would be unavoidable. "What are you saying?" Father's voice grew harsh. "I won't be complicit in Bethany's crimes. In fact," I took a deep breath and continued, "I've decided to provide information about the past irregularities to the prosecution." Father stood up. "You're going to expose our family's shame?" This time I raised my voice. "Being intoxicated by false glory, discriminating against your daughter trying to be complicit in crime, isn't that the real shame?" Mother broke down crying. Father approached me, seemingly enraged. "Have you forgotten the debt you owe us for raising you?" I stood up quietly without relying on my cane on my own feet, demanding returns for parental love that's truly twisted thinking. "Get out!" Father shouted. "You're no longer my daughter." "Yes, that's right," I said. "Perhaps we were never truly family even long before this." Murphy carried my bag and accompanied me to the elevator. "You held up well," he said compassionately in the elevator. "Yes, but I'm all right now," I smiled. "I feel like I've finally reclaimed my true self." As we left the building, the spring air enveloped us. The trees in Central Park were beginning to show new buds. While getting into the taxi, I looked up at the sky. I felt deep in my heart that this wasn't an ending, but a new beginning. That evening, I received a call from the district attorney's office. New evidence of Bethany's fraud had been discovered, and additional charges would be filed. There were persistent calls from Mother, but I felt no need to answer them anymore. When I returned to my home in Brooklyn, Mrs. Martha was planting flowers in her garden. "Welcome home, dear," she smiled kindly. "I'm planting new flowers. They'll bloom beautifully come spring." I smiled back. A new season is about to begin, isn't it? September 2024. Breaking news. The streets of Brooklyn Heights gleamed under the early autumn sunlight. A sleek sign reading Wilson and Associates Accounting had just been installed on an office building near the Brooklyn Promenade. As I opened the door to my accounting firm, the changes of the past 6 months weighed heavily on my thoughts. From the office windows, the towering Manhattan skyline stretched before me, a stark reminder of how much had shifted. The cluster of high-rises where my sister's office once stood now felt like a distant memory, a part of a landscape I no longer recognized. Good morning, Miss Wilson. Emily at reception greeted me cheerfully, her voice a welcome reminder of the colleagues who had supported me when I ventured into independence. Did you see the morning news? Emily asked quietly. Yes, I nodded slightly. The headline had been impossible to ignore. Bethany's sentencing was front and center. 15 years in prison. The additional evidence that had come to light revealed the full extent of her misdeeds, over $30 million in misappropriated funds. And father's real estate company? It was in turmoil. Major clients were severing ties one after another, each departure chipping away at the credibility that had once been their foundation. Though I still occasionally received emotional messages from my parents, I no longer replied. The distance had become permanent. Miss Wilson, here are the materials for the 10 o'clock meeting. Olivia, the new hire, entered, handing me a stack of documents. Olivia had also supported my decision to strike out on my own. Thank you. By the way, how's the Proano project coming along? The accounting system improvement for the Single Mother Support Center is on track, right? I asked, already focused on the next step. When I became independent, I made a vow to dedicate a portion of our profits to social causes. It was my way of redefining success, understanding that it was about more than just financial gain. Yes, it's on schedule, Olivia replied, her smile bright. Just then, Mrs. Martha walked in holding a bouquet of flowers. Alice! She greeted me with a warm smile. This is to celebrate 6 months since your opening. I grew these flowers in my garden. Oh, thank you so much, I beamed, touched by her kindness. The bouquet sparkled with roses and gerbras in an array of vivid colors. The week before, we'd had the most delightful home party, marking a shift from the family dinners I used to have. Now, my neighbors and I were creating our own traditions, real, unspoken connections with people who cared, not bound by blood, but by something far more genuine. Oh, yes, I got the concert tickets, Mrs. Martha said excitedly. Carnegie Hall next month. B, right? The luxury of enjoying classical music on weekends had returned to my life, a simple pleasure I hadn't realized I missed so much. In the afternoon, my phone rang. It was Murphy. Bethany is requesting to see you. I'll have to decline, I answered without hesitation. I'm not going back to the past. Outside the window, boats drifted across the East River, moving slowly across the sparkling water. Even the bridge where I had the accident now looked different to me, transformed, no longer a place of pain. On my desk sat a new family photo taken at the recent office opening party. There were my staff members, Mrs. Martha, and my new friends. Everyone's smiles were warm, genuine. This was real. Alice, could you do a final check on this proposal? Michael, a senior staff member, entered my office carrying a thick file. Of course, I nodded with a smile, feeling a true sense of fulfillment. I understood now, more than ever, the joy of work and the importance of human bonds that transcended anything I had known before. As the evening approached and I finished tidying up my desk, I stood by the window. The lights of Manhattan were beginning to twinkle, one by one, as the city came alive. I realized then that life sometimes takes unexpected turns, but if you stay true to what really matters, a new path will always open up. I had learned that lesson firsthand. I reached for my gardening gloves. Tonight, I would tend to the plants on my balcony, nurturing the small corner of peace I had built. After all, tomorrow would bring a new day. What do you do when the people you've spent your whole life trying to impress finally show their true colors? Do you keep giving, hoping things will change, or do you decide that your own happiness matters more? Alice spent years putting her all into her family's approval, always second to Bethany, her sister who seemed to get everything handed to her on a silver platter. No matter how much Alice achieved her steady promotions, her hard-earned savings, Bethany's fleeting successes were always celebrated with more fanfare. But when Alice found herself alone in the hospital, abandoned by her parents during her surgery for Bethany's important award ceremony, something inside her shifted. That night, she made a decision. The reality of her family's priorities became clear when they expected Alice to sacrifice her own security to bail Bethany out of legal trouble. But Alice, now recovering from her accident and reflecting on her life, realized that the family she had tried so hard to fit into had never truly supported her. They only cared about Bethany's success. With that truth in hand, Alice chose to break free from their manipulation. She didn't just walk away from the chaos. She took control, exposing the lies and standing up for her own peace. So, what would you do in Alice's shoes? Would you keep pouring into a relationship that drains you? Or would you finally walk away and reclaim your own happiness? Let's hear your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more inspiring tales.
As I stood in our living room, watching Richard pace, a sense of dread washed over me. This was the morning we were supposed to embark on our 30th anniversary trip, a journey that promised to rekindle the flame in our marriage that had been flickering out over the years. But Richard, my husband of 3 decades, was a picture of anxiety and distance, not the excited partner I had expected. "Richard, is everything okay? You seem preoccupied," I asked, my voice laced with concern. It was unlike him to be so distracted, especially today. He stopped pacing and turned to me. His eyes, once a source of warmth and comfort, now evaded mine as if hiding a painful secret. "Elaine, I need to tell you something," he began, his voice devoid of its usual tenderness. "I can't make the trip. Something urgent has come up at work, and I need to handle it." The words hit me like a cold wave. "On our anniversary? Can it wait?" I couldn't mask the disappointment in my voice. This trip was more than just a vacation. It was supposed to be a new beginning for us. Richard's response was curt, a sharp contrast to his normally considerate demeanor. "Business doesn't wait. You know how it is," he said almost mechanically. "But we've been planning this for months, Richard. Can it be postponed?" I pressed on, hoping for some indication that he shared my disappointment. "It's not negotiable, Elaine." His tone was firm, leaving no room for discussion. "I expect you to understand." Understand? How could I? I watched in silence as Richard hurriedly grabbed a few essentials and left, the door closing with a finality that felt symbolic. The man who had promised to grow old with me was now a stranger, his actions shrouded in mystery. Once alone, my mind raced with confusion and suspicion. This wasn't like the Richard I knew. The man who once couldn't wait to spend time with me now seemed to find any excuse to be away. Determined to unearth the truth, I went to our bedroom and started searching through his things. It was unlike me to pry, but the gnawing doubt left me no choice. Then, amidst his neatly folded shirts and socks, I found it, a small, crumpled receipt from a high-end jewelry store. My hands trembled as I unfolded it, revealing an expensive purchase made just a week ago. A necklace, luxurious and elegant, and certainly not for me. I hadn't received a gift from Richard in years. My heart raced as I pieced together the painful puzzle. Richard was having an affair. A wave of emotions crashed over me. Betrayal, anger, sadness. I realized I couldn't let this pass unchecked. Richard had to answer for his deceit, and I was going to make sure of it. The trip might have been canceled, but my journey to confront the truth and demand accountability from the man I thought I knew had just begun. The house felt eerily silent after Richard left. I sat at the dining table, the crumpled receipt from the jewelry store in front of me. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. This was not the first sign of Richard's infidelity, but merely the latest in a series of subtle changes I had been too naive to acknowledge. I thought back to the late nights he claimed were spent at work, the sudden weekend meetings, and the decreasing number of calls he made to check in on me. Each memory was a piece of a jigsaw puzzle I had refused to complete until now. Armed with a resolve hardened by betrayal, I decided it was time to take action. I couldn't confront Richard without solid proof. I needed to know more, to understand the extent of his deception. My first step was to call the jewelry store. Disguising my voice, I inquired about the necklace on the receipt. The salesperson, eager to help, confirmed that the piece was indeed purchased by Richard, and he had mentioned it was a gift for someone special. My heart sank at those words. Next, I turned to Richard's phone records. I knew it was an invasion of privacy, but the trust that once held our marriage together had already been shattered. Scrolling through his call history, I saw numerous calls to a number I didn't recognize, often late at night or early in the morning. I jotted it down, my mind racing with anger and hurt. The following day, I followed Richard. I felt like a character in a cheap detective novel, but desperation drove me. I watched from a distance as he met with a young woman, half his age, at a cafe. They laughed and talked with a familiarity that twisted the knife in my heart. I took photos as proof, each snapshot a testament to his betrayal. That evening, when Richard returned home, acting as if nothing was amiss, I confronted him. "Richard, who is she?" I demanded, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. He looked at me, confusion clouding his face. "Who are you talking about, Elaine?" "Don't play dumb, Richard. The woman you were with today, the one you bought the necklace for." I threw the photos on the table in front of him. Richard's face went pale, but he quickly regained his composure. "Elaine, you're being paranoid. She's just a colleague from work." "A colleague?" I scoffed. "I'm not a fool, Richard. I've seen the way you two are together. It's clear you're having an affair." Richard's expression hardened. "You've been spying on me? Invading my privacy?" "Yes, I have. Because you've been lying to me." "How long has this been going on, Richard?" He averted his gaze, his silence confirming my suspicions. Rage and disappointment battled within me. This was the man I had built a life with, and he was treating our marriage like it was nothing. "I want the truth, Richard. I deserve that much," I said, my voice breaking. Richard finally met my gaze, his eyes cold and detached. "Fine. You want the truth? Yes, I've been seeing her. It started a few months ago. Happy now?" His words were like daggers, each one piercing through the remnants of the trust and love I had for him. I felt a surge of anger, but beneath it there was an overwhelming sense of betrayal. "How could you do this to us, Richard, to me?" My voice trembled, barely containing the hurt. "Was our marriage, our life together, just a joke to you?" Richard sighed, a mixture of frustration and indifference. "It's not that simple, Elaine. You wouldn't understand." "Try me," I challenged, fighting back tears. "Make me understand why you threw away 30 years for a fling." He shrugged, his nonchalance fueling my anger. "Things change, Elaine. People change. What we had, it's not the same anymore." I stared at him, incredulous. This was not the man I married, not the partner I had loved and trusted. He was a stranger wearing Richard's face. "Is that all I get? A cliché? No remorse, no apology?" I asked, my voice rising. Richard remained silent, his lack of response speaking volumes. I knew then that our marriage was beyond repair. The man before me was not the one I had vowed to spend my life with. He had chosen his path, and it was time for me to choose mine. "I want a divorce, Richard," I said, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. Richard looked at me, finally showing a flicker of emotion. "You're serious?" "More than I've ever been. I can't be with someone who has so little respect for me, for what we built together." My decision was firm, born out of pain and betrayal, but also out of a newfound strength. Richard didn't argue. He knew as well as I did that there was no going back from this. That night, I lay in bed, the weight of my decision heavy on my heart. I had lost the man I loved, but in the process, I had found a part of myself that I didn't know existed. A part that was strong, resilient, and ready to face a new beginning. The morning after confronting Richard about his affair, I woke up feeling like I was in the middle of a nightmare. The comfort of our bedroom now felt like a hollow shell of the life we had built together. I sat up, knowing that today was not just another day. It was the day I would start taking control of my life. As I made coffee, the silence of the house was deafening. Richard had spent the night in the guest room, a symbolic distance that spoke louder than words. I knew I had to plan my next steps carefully. It wasn't just about ending my marriage, it was about reclaiming my dignity. When Richard finally emerged, he looked like a man defeated, his usual confident demeanor replaced by a sullen resignation. "Elaine, about yesterday," he began, his voice trailing off. "What about it, Richard? You admitted to your affair. What more is there to say?" I cut him off, not interested in any excuses he might have. I never intended to hurt you," he said, looking down at his feet. I laughed, a bitter, scornful laugh. "You didn't intend to hurt me? What did you think would happen, Richard? Did you think I'd never find out? Or did you just not care?" He didn't answer, and in his silence, I found my resolve strengthening. "You know what, Richard? It doesn't matter. Your intentions don't change what you did. I want a divorce, and I want it as soon as possible." Richard finally looked at me, a flicker of panic in his eyes. "Elaine, please, let's talk about this. We can go to counseling. We can try to work this out." "Counseling? Now you want to try?" It's too late for that, Richard. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine. I could see the realization dawning on him that I was serious. For years I had put his needs before mine, forgiving his shortcomings and overlooking his flaws. But not anymore. Elaine, I'm sorry, he finally muttered. Sorry doesn't change what you did. It doesn't erase the betrayal, I said, my voice steady, even though inside I was crumbling. I spent the day consulting a lawyer and making plans for my future. I was determined to not let Richard's actions define the rest of my life. I would start fresh, no matter how daunting that seemed. That evening, as I lay in bed, I realized that despite the pain and betrayal, I felt a sense of empowerment. I was taking charge of my destiny, no longer a passive player in Richard's deceitful game. For years, I had clung to the hope that our love would prevail, that we would overcome any obstacle. But now I saw the truth. Our marriage was a facade, one that Richard had shattered with his infidelity. As I stared at the ceiling, lost in my thoughts, the door creaked open. Richard stood there, a mix of defiance and desperation in his eyes. Elaine, we need to talk about how we're going to handle this. The divorce, I mean. I sat up, steeling myself. Handle it? You'll hear from my lawyer. That's how we'll handle it. Elaine, be reasonable. Think about what you're doing. We can sort this out without lawyers, without making it messy, he pleaded. Reasonable? I echoed, incredulous. You cheat on me, lie to me, and now you want me to be reasonable? It's beyond that, Richard. You made it messy the moment you decided to betray our vows. He took a step forward, his hands reaching out as if to find some connection, some remnant of the love we once shared. I know I messed up, but we've been together for 30 years. That has to count for something. It did count for something, Richard. It counted for everything, until you threw it away. 30 years, and you decided that wasn't enough, I said, my voice laced with a mix of sorrow and indignation. Richard's face fell, the reality of the situation finally sinking in. So that's it then? You're just going to throw away everything we had? Throw away? No, Richard, you threw it away. I'm just picking up the pieces, I replied, my resolve unwavering. He stood there for a moment as if waiting for me to change my mind, to offer some glimmer of hope, but there was none left to give. Finally, with a defeated sigh, he turned and left the room. Lying in the dark, I realized the enormity of the path ahead. The divorce would be just the beginning. There would be challenges, heartaches, and moments of doubt, but there would also be freedom, a chance to rediscover who I was before Richard, before the lies and betrayal. As I drifted off to sleep, a single thought echoed in my mind. I would not only survive this, I would emerge stronger, forged by the fire of betrayal, and tempered by the resolve to never again be anyone's victim. The days following my decision to divorce Richard were a whirlwind of activity. I met with my lawyer, discussing the best strategy to ensure I came out of this marriage with what I deserved. The hurt from Richard's betrayal still lingered, but it was now accompanied by a burning desire for retribution. One afternoon, as I was sorting through some financial documents, I stumbled upon something that made my blood run cold. There, hidden amongst bank statements and bills, were receipts and documents for a luxury apartment, one that Richard had rented in the city. Rage boiled within me as I realized that this was where he had been taking her, his mistress. This wasn't just a fleeting affair. He had invested time, money, and effort into this deception. I knew then that my retribution needed to be more than just emotional. It needed to hit Richard where it hurt him the most, his pride and his wallet. With meticulous planning, I began my campaign. I reached out to some mutual friends and subtly revealed Richard's infidelity. I watched as the news spread, tarnishing the reputation he had so carefully built. The man who prided himself on his status in our social circles was now the subject of pity and disdain. But I didn't stop there. I made sure that every detail of our divorce proceedings highlighted his infidelity and financial duplicity. My lawyer, skilled in unraveling complex marital finances, ensured that Richard's hidden assets were brought to light. During one particularly tense meeting, Richard sat across from me, his face a mask of controlled anger. "You're dragging my name through the mud, Elaine. Is this really necessary?" I met his gaze, my voice steady. "Necessary? Richard, you made a mockery of our marriage. This is the consequence of your actions." He clenched his jaw, his hands forming tight fists. "You're going to regret this. I'll make sure of it." His threat was meant to intimidate me, but I had grown immune to his manipulations. Regret? The only thing I regret is not seeing who you truly were sooner. As the divorce proceedings dragged on, Richard's true nature became increasingly evident. He tried to hide assets, dodge alimony payments, and smear my character. But each attempt only strengthened my resolve to see this through, to ensure he faced the consequences of his betrayal. The day the divorce was finalized, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had won a significant portion of our shared assets, and Richard was ordered to pay a substantial amount in alimony. But more than the financial victory, it was the knowledge that I had stood up to him, that I had not let his betrayal define me, that felt like my greatest triumph. As I walked out of the courtroom, I knew that this was just the beginning of my new life. A life where I was no longer bound to a man who had shown me nothing but deceit. A life where I could finally start to heal and move forward. With the divorce finalized, I found myself standing at the threshold of a new chapter in my life. The sense of liberation was overwhelming, yet daunting. For the first time in years, my future was mine to shape, free from Richard's deceitful shadow. As I began to rebuild my life, I realized that the marriage had taken more from me than I had admitted. My interests, passions, and friendships had been sidelined in my efforts to be the perfect wife to Richard. Now it was time to rediscover Elaine Thompson, the woman before the wife. I started by reconnecting with old friends, many of whom I had lost touch with during my marriage. As I shared my story, I found a network of support and understanding. Their indignation at Richard's actions and their admiration for my strength in facing him gave me a sense of vindication. One evening, over dinner with a group of close friends, the conversation inevitably turned to Richard and the aftermath of our divorce. "Elaine, you really showed him," exclaimed my friend Marissa, her eyes sparkling with a mix of amusement and respect. "He thought he could get away with it, but you turned the tables beautifully." I smiled, feeling a surge of pride. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I couldn't let him think he could betray me without consequences. "And the way you exposed his financial secrets. That was brilliant," added another friend, David. "He really underestimated you." Their words bolstered my resolve. I had not only stood up to Richard, but had also exposed him for who he truly was. The community's perception of him had shifted drastically, and he was no longer the respected figure he once was. However, the path to rebuilding my life wasn't just about settling scores with Richard. It was also about finding myself again. I enrolled in art classes, something I had always wanted to do but never had the time for. Each stroke of the brush on the canvas was therapeutic, a way of expressing the emotions I had bottled up for years. I also started volunteering at a local shelter, finding purpose in helping others. It was during these moments of giving back that I felt a true sense of fulfillment, a stark contrast to the hollow life I had lived with Richard. Yet, Richard's shadow still lingered. One afternoon, as I was leaving the art studio, my phone rang. It was Richard. I hesitated for a moment before answering, curious about what he could possibly have to say. "Elaine, we need to talk." Richard's voice came through, a hint of desperation in his tone. "Talk? About what, Richard? The divorce is final. There's nothing left to discuss," I replied, my guard up. "It's not about the divorce. I'm in a bit of a situation," he said, his voice faltering. I paused, a part of me feeling a twinge of curiosity. "What kind of situation?" I've made some bad investments. I'm in financial trouble, Elaine." "Serious trouble," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I couldn't help but feel a sense of ironic justice. Richard, who had always prided himself on his financial acumen, now found himself in the pit he had dug for himself. "Richard, your financial issues are no longer my concern. You made your bed," I responded, my voice firm. I know, but I was hoping maybe you could help me out, just temporarily," he pleaded. The audacity of his request took me aback. After everything he had put me through, he had the gall to ask for my help. "Help you? After you cheated, lied, and tried to hide your assets during the divorce? You must be joking," I said, incredulity lacing my words. "I'm serious, Elaine. I wouldn't ask if it weren't urgent. I might lose everything," he pressed. "Richard, you lost everything the moment you decided to betray our marriage. I suggest you find another way to solve your problems, I said, ending the call. As I put the phone down, a sense of empowerment washed over me. The Richard who had once controlled and manipulated me was now at the mercy of his own poor decisions. I had moved on, building a life filled with new passions, friends, and a sense of purpose. The road ahead was still long, and I knew there would be challenges. But for the first time in years, I felt truly alive, the architect of my own destiny. Richard was a chapter closed, a painful lesson learned, but also the catalyst for my transformation into a stronger, more independent version of myself. In the months following our divorce, Richard's life seemed to unravel at the seams. The once respected businessman was now a shadow of his former self, his poor choices catching up to him. I heard snippets of his misfortunes through mutual acquaintances, each story a testament to his rapidly declining situation. One day I received an unexpected visit from Richard. He stood at my doorstep, a man defeated. His clothes were disheveled, a far cry from the meticulously dressed Richard Ward once knew. "Elaine, I need to talk to you. It's important," he said, his voice lacking its usual confidence. I hesitated, but eventually led him into the living room. His presence in the house we once shared felt invasive, a reminder of a painful past. "What is it, Richard? I thought we had nothing left to say to each other," I said, my arms crossed. It's about the money I owe," he started, unable to meet my eyes. "I've been drowning in debt. The investments I made, they've gone south. I'm on the brink of bankruptcy." I listened, feeling a mix of vindication and pity. Richard, who had always prided himself on his financial prowess, was now crumbling under the weight of his own arrogance. "Elaine, I was wondering if you could lend me some money. Just enough to get back on my feet," he pleaded. The request left me speechless. After everything he had done, he still had the audacity to ask for my help. "Richard, you must be out of your mind. Why would I help you after you betrayed me, after you tried to cheat me out of what was rightfully mine?" I said, the bitterness evident in my voice. "I know I've made mistakes, Elaine, terrible ones, but I'm desperate. I have nowhere else to turn," he said, a hint of desperation creeping into his voice. "Your mistakes were your own doing, Richard. You chose to betray our marriage, to lie, to deceive. You chose to live beyond your means, chasing after a life filled with greed and infidelity. It's not my responsibility to save you from the consequences of your actions," I replied, my resolve firm. Richard's face contorted with a mix of anger and desperation. "So that's it? You're just going to watch me fall? You didn't seem to have any qualms watching our marriage fall apart. You made your choices, Richard. Now you have to live with them," I said, standing my ground. He looked around the room, a room that once symbolized our life together, now a symbol of his downfall. "I never thought it would come to this. I thought I could handle everything." "Thinking you could handle everything was your biggest mistake. You overestimated yourself, and now you're paying the price," I said, the finality in my voice signaling the end of our conversation. Richard stood up, a broken man. As he walked to the door, he turned to me one last time. "I really did love you, Elaine, in my own way." "I wish I could believe that, Richard. But love doesn't destroy, doesn't deceive. What you had for me wasn't love." "Goodbye, Richard," I said, closing the door behind him. As I watched him walk away, a part of me felt sorry for the man he had become. But I knew that any sympathy for Richard was misplaced. He was the architect of his own downfall, a man who let his ego and desires lead him down a path of destruction. In that moment, I realized that my journey was not just about overcoming Richard's betrayal. It was about rising above it, about finding strength in adversity. I had not only survived the storm, but I had also emerged stronger, ready to face a future that was entirely my own making. Months passed since Richard's desperate visit, and my life had taken on a rhythm of peace and self-discovery. I had grown accustomed to the solitude and the freedom it brought. However, the last chapter of my story with Richard was yet to be written. One crisp autumn morning, as I tended to my garden, a task that had become a source of joy, I received a call from Marissa. "Elaine, have you seen the news?" Marissa's voice was tinged with disbelief. "No, what happened?" I asked, a sense of apprehension building inside me. "It's Richard. He's been arrested for embezzlement and fraud. It's all over the news," she said. I stood in silence, the phone almost slipping from my hand. The news was shocking, yet somehow it felt like an inevitable conclusion to Richard's self-destructive path. "Are you okay, Elaine?" Marissa asked, concern evident in her voice. I don't know. I need some time to process this," I replied, my mind racing. I spent the day in a daze, reflecting on the entirety of our shared history. Richard, the man I once loved and trusted, had fallen so far from the person I thought he was. His arrest was a stark reminder of the consequences of greed and betrayal. That evening, as I sat by the fireplace, a sense of clarity washed over me. Richard's downfall was not my doing, but the result of his own choices. I had moved on, building a life that was no longer overshadowed by his deceit. The next day, a letter arrived from Richard. His handwriting was shaky, the words of a broken man. He wrote of his regrets, his mistakes, and his realization of the pain he had caused. He asked for my forgiveness, not expecting redemption, but seeking some solace in his remorse. I read the letter several times, each reading bringing a wave of mixed emotions. In the end, I decided to not respond. Forgiveness was a journey, and I was not ready to embark on it, at least not for Richard. As I moved forward with my life, I found strength in the lessons I had learned. The pain of betrayal had been transformed into a resilience that guided me. I had found a sense of purpose in my passions and a community that valued and supported me. The final chapter of my story with Richard had closed, not with revenge, but with the realization that my happiness and peace were no longer tied to him or his actions. I had reclaimed my life, not as a victim of Richard's betrayal, but as a survivor, stronger and more self-assured. In the solitude of my garden, I found moments of reflection. The blooming flowers with their vibrant colors and resilience reminded me of my journey. Like them, I had weathered storms, but I had emerged more beautiful and robust. My story with Richard was a chapter of my past, a painful lesson in love and trust. But it was also a chapter that forged me into the person I am today, independent, strong, and content in my own skin. As I looked towards the future, I realized that my life was now a blank canvas, ready for new experiences, new joys, and new challenges. I was no longer defined by my past, but empowered by it. I had found a new sense of self, one that was not reliant on anyone else for validation or happiness. Richard's downfall, though tragic, served as a stark reminder of the consequences of living a life driven by deceit and selfishness. It reinforced my belief in living authentically, with integrity and respect for myself and others. In the end, the greatest revenge was not in seeing Richard fall, but in seeing myself rise. I had turned my pain into power, my betrayal into strength. My life was now my own, a beautiful testament to the resilience of the human spirit. As I closed the chapter on Richard and our shared past, I embraced the unknown future with open arms, ready to write new stories, create new memories, and live a life filled with purpose and joy. I pushed open the door to the maternity ward with a sense of anticipation, only to have it crushed under the weight of the scene before me. There, in a room filled with the soft coos of a newborn, was Emily, my childhood friend, and Jack, the man I called my husband. Between them lay the undeniable truth, a baby, their baby. "Anna, you're here." Emily's voice was falsely cheerful. "Meet Ethan, our little miracle." The words hit me like a physical blow, yet I managed to find a smile. "He's beautiful, Emily. Congratulations." Jack stood there, a picture of conflict. "Anna, I can explain," he stammered. I held up my hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "No need, Jack. I think the situation speaks for itself." Emily's eyes gleamed with a mix of victory and spite. "We didn't plan this, Anna. These things just happen." The coldness in my chest spread as I looked at them, my life unraveling in front of my eyes. "Yes, things just happen," I echoed hollowly. Jack's eyes begged for understanding. "Anna, please, let's talk about this." I shook my head, the reality setting in. "There's nothing to discuss, Jack. You've made your choice." Emily butted in, her voice sharp. "It's not like you were starting a family anyway. What with your career and all?" I felt a surge of anger, but quickly masked it with a calm exterior. "My career has nothing to do with this betrayal, Emily. You know that." Jack tried to reach out, his face etched with regret. "Anna, I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." I stepped back, avoiding his touch. "But you did, Jack. You both did." Turning to leave, I could feel their eyes on my back, heavy with unspoken words and guilt. As I walked out, Emily's voice, laced with fake concern, followed me. Take care, Anna. We really are sorry. Outside, the hospital's pristine halls felt suffocating. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and dialed a familiar number. It's me. It happened. The baby, it's Jack's. My voice was steady, belying the chaos within. I need your help. We need to meet immediately. The call ended, and I was left staring at the sterile walls, my mind racing. This was not just a betrayal, it was a declaration of war, and I was not going to retreat. A week later, I sat across from my old friend, Lisa, at a quiet cafe downtown. Lisa had been my confidant since college, the one person who knew me inside out. Anna, how are you holding up? Lisa's concern was evident in her eyes. I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. I'm managing. It still feels unreal, you know? Lisa reached across the table, squeezing my hand. I can only imagine. But why did you want to meet? Is there something you're planning? A flash of determination crossed my face. I can't let them get away with this, Lisa. I need to do something. Lisa leaned in, her expression serious. What are you thinking, Anna? I hesitated for a moment before speaking. I want to expose them, make them feel the pain they've caused me. Lisa nodded, understanding my need for retribution. Do you have a plan? I outlined my idea, watching as Lisa listened intently. First, I need to gather evidence. Texts, emails, anything that proves their affair. Smart move, Lisa commented. But how will you get this evidence? I have access to Jack's laptop. He's careless with passwords, and I know Emily's routine. It won't be difficult to catch her off guard. Lisa's eyes narrowed in thought. And after you get this evidence? I felt a cold resolve settle within me. I'm going to expose them publicly. At the Smith family reunion next month, Jack's entire family will be there. Lisa's eyes widened. That's bold, Anna, but what about the repercussions? I met her gaze squarely. I've thought about it. I'm ready for whatever comes next. They need to pay for their betrayal. Lisa sighed, offering a supportive smile. I'm with you, Anna. Whatever you need, I'm here. I felt a surge of gratitude for Lisa's unwavering support. Thank you, Lisa. I'll need your help to pull this off. We spent the next hour strategizing, plotting each step with meticulous care. As I left the cafe, a sense of purpose filled me. Jack and Emily had shattered my world, but I was going to rebuild it on my terms. They would soon learn the cost of their deceit. The evening was chilly as I parked outside Jack's office building, waiting. Tonight was crucial. I needed to access his laptop to find undeniable proof of his betrayal with Emily. As Jack's car finally pulled out of the parking lot, I slipped inside, using the spare key he didn't know I had. My heart pounded as I made my way to his home office, a room once filled with shared dreams and now just a symbol of his deceit. I booted up his laptop, my fingers flying over the keys. Emails, messages, photos, the evidence of their affair unfolded before me. My heart ached, but I pushed the pain aside. This was about justice now. Anna, what are you doing here? I spun around, startled. Jack stood in the doorway, his face a mix of surprise and guilt. I could ask you the same, Jack, working late or just avoiding coming home. My voice was steady, but my insides churned with anger. Jack sighed, running a hand through his hair. I'm sorry, Anna. I know I've hurt you. I scoffed, turning back to the laptop. Sorry doesn't even begin to cover it, Jack. I trusted you. Jack moved closer, his voice softening. Anna, let's talk. We can fix this. I spun around, anger flaring. Fix this? How, Jack? By pretending you didn't betray me with my best friend? Jack flinched at my words, but his expression hardened. It wasn't planned, Anna. It just happened. I laughed bitterly. It just happened. That's your excuse? You destroyed our marriage, Jack. Jack's gaze dropped. I know I made a mistake, but I still love you, Anna. I shook my head in disbelief. Love? Is that what you call this? Sneaking around, lying to my face? Jack reached out, but I stepped back. Don't, Jack. We're beyond that now. My eyes returned to the laptop screen, the evidence glaring back at me. I have what I need now. Proof of your little affair. Jack's eyes widened in panic. Anna, please, think about what you're doing. I met his gaze, my resolve unwavering. I have thought about it, Jack, and I'm just getting started. Leaving Jack standing there, I walked out with the evidence I needed. It was time for them to face the consequences of their actions. The day of the Smith family reunion arrived, a perfect stage for the unveiling of Jack and Emily's deceit. I had meticulously planned every detail, the evidence securely tucked away in my purse. As I entered the grand hall, adorned with family portraits and laughter, I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it, the moment of truth. Jack spotted me first, his eyes widening in surprise and worry. "Anna, you came. I wasn't sure you'd—" I cut him off with a cold smile. "Miss this? Not for the world, Jack." Emily, seeing me, hesitated before approaching with a forced smile. "Anna, it's good to see you." I nodded curtly, my gaze scanning the room. "Quite the gathering, isn't it?" As dinner commenced, I felt the eyes of Jack's family on me, their whispers barely concealed. I bided my time, waiting for the perfect moment. Finally, as the toasts began, I stood, my heart pounding in my chest. "May I have your attention, please?" The room fell silent, all eyes on me. Jack's face drained of color, a silent plea in his eyes. But it was too late for pleas. "I have something to share," I began, my voice steady. "About Jack and Emily." A collective gasp filled the room as I pulled out the photos and messages, displaying them for all to see. The evidence of their affair, undeniable and raw. The reactions were immediate and varied: shock, anger, disappointment. Jack's mother looked like she might faint, while his father's face reddened in fury. Emily tried to interrupt, her voice shrill. "Anna, please, this isn't what it looks like." I turned to her, my gaze cold. "Isn't it? It looks like betrayal to me. It looks like my husband and my best friend stabbing me in the back." Jack finally found his voice, his tone desperate. "Anna, I'm so sorry. Please, let's talk about this." I shook my head, my resolve firm. "There's nothing left to say, Jack. You've made your bed, and now you can lie in it." The room erupted into chaos, family members voicing their outrage and disappointment. Jack's father approached me, his expression one of deep regret. "Anna, we had no idea. I'm so sorry you had to go through this." I nodded, feeling a strange sense of relief amidst the turmoil. "Thank you, Mr. Smith. I just thought you all deserved to know the truth." As I left the room, the weight of the past months seemed to lift off my shoulders. I had done it, exposed their lies, their betrayal. The path ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of hope. In the weeks following the family reunion, the fallout from my revelation was more devastating than I had anticipated. Jack's family, once a pillar of support and pride, had shunned him, and Emily was now a pariah, her true character exposed. I sat across from Lisa at the same cafe where we had plotted our strategy, watching the ripple effects unfold. "They're getting what they deserve," I said, a bitter taste in my mouth. Lisa sipped her coffee, her eyes reflecting the gravity of the situation. "How are you holding up, though? This must be hard on you, too." I shrugged, my emotions a complex web. "It's a relief, honestly, but it's also empty. I wanted justice, and I got it, but at what cost?" Lisa reached over, her touch reassuring. "You stood up for yourself, Anna. Don't ever regret that." News of the scandal had spread like wildfire. Jack had been suspended from his job pending an investigation, and Emily's social circles had turned their backs on her. Their affair, once hidden in shadows, was now in the harsh light of public scrutiny. I learned from mutual friends that Emily had tried to reach out to me, but I had no interest in her apologies. She had made her choice, and now she was living with the consequences. Jack, on the other hand, had become a shell of the man I once knew. He called me repeatedly, leaving voicemails filled with apologies and pleas for forgiveness. But I couldn't find it in me to feel sympathy for him. He had broken the vows we made, the trust we built. One evening I received a call from Jack's mother. Her voice was weary, filled with sadness. "Anna, I just wanted to apologize on behalf of our family. We never knew about Jack's indiscretions. You didn't deserve any of this." Her words were kind, but they did little to soothe the pain. "Thank you, Mrs. Smith. I appreciate your call." As the call ended, I looked out the window, watching the world go by. The streets were busy with life, people moving on, unaffected by the turmoil in my world. I realized then that it was time for me to move on, too. I had gotten my revenge, exposed the lies and deceit, but holding on to the anger and bitterness would only poison me further. I made a decision that day. It was time to close this chapter of my life and start anew. Jack and Emily had chosen their paths, and now I was choosing mine, a path towards healing and hopefully happiness. Several months had passed since I had laid bare the truth about Jack and Emily. The once tumultuous storm of emotions had settled into a calm acceptance. I found myself in a new phase of life, one marked by self-discovery and rebuilding. Lisa and I met again at our usual cafe, a place that had witnessed the unfolding of my revenge and now my renewal. "You seem different, Anna. Lighter, somehow," Lisa observed, her eyes searching mine. I smiled, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't known in a long time. "I am different, Lisa. The whole ordeal with Jack and Emily, it forced me to reevaluate everything. I've let go of the anger. It was consuming me." Lisa smiled back, visibly relieved. "I'm so glad to hear that. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die." I nodded in agreement. "And I've got news. I've decided to start a new chapter in my life." Lisa leaned in, her curiosity piqued. "Do tell." "I'm moving," I announced. "A new city, a new job, a fresh start." Lisa's smile broadened. "That's wonderful, Anna. You deserve all the happiness in the world." I sipped my coffee, feeling a sense of excitement for the future. "Thank you, Lisa. I'm looking forward to it." "Oh, and there's something else. What is it?" Lisa asked, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. I hesitated for a moment, the words feeling surreal even to me. "I've met someone. His name is Michael. He's different, kind, understanding. We've been seeing each other for a few weeks now." Lisa's excitement was palpable. "Anna, that's amazing. Tell me everything about him." As I shared details about Michael, I realized how far I had come from the broken woman I was months ago. The pain inflicted by Jack and Emily's betrayal would always be a part of my story, but it no longer defined me. I had taken control of my narrative, turning a painful ending into a hopeful beginning. The sun set outside the cafe, casting a warm glow over the bustling city. Life moved on, relentless and beautiful in its persistence, and so did I, stepping into a future filled with possibilities and the promise of new beginnings. The clock struck 8 as I, Eleanor, sat at the dining table, sipping my tea in silence. At 55, I prided myself on maintaining a sense of style and grace. My job as a senior editor at a lifestyle magazine wasn't just a career, it was my passion, a part of who I was. Richard, my husband of nearly 30 years, sat across from me, his eyes glued to his phone. The silence between us wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, loaded with years of unspoken resentments and faded love. "I wish you'd just die already," Richard muttered, not looking up from his screen. His words sliced through the quiet room like a sharp knife. I felt a chill run down my spine, not from fear, but from the sheer coldness of his statement. "What did you just say?" I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Richard finally looked up, his expression one of annoyance rather than regret. "You heard me. It's not like you're doing anything valuable, just taking up space." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was the man I had married, the man who had once promised to cherish me. Now he wished me dead. Our marriage had become a shadow of what it once was. Richard's outdated beliefs, his insistence that a woman's place was in the home, clashed fiercely with my independence and career ambitions. It wasn't just about us anymore. His mother, Claire, a widowed woman of considerable wealth, had become a point of contention. Richard often spoke of her fortune, eyeing it like a vulture. "You're unbelievable," I said, my voice tinged with disgust. "Is this really what our marriage has come to? You wishing me dead?" Richard scoffed. "Marriage? This is a contract of convenience, nothing more. And let's not pretend you're not waiting for Claire to kick the bucket for her money." His accusation was like a slap in the face. Unlike him, I had never seen Claire as a walking bank account. She was a kind, intelligent woman who deserved better than a son waiting for her demise. "You're a monster," I said quietly, standing up from the table. "I don't even know who you are anymore." Richard's laugh was cruel and hollow. "Oh, Eleanor, you never knew me. You were too busy with your precious career." I walked away from the table from Richard, feeling a mixture of anger, sadness, and an overwhelming sense of loss. Not for what we had, but for what we could have had if only Richard had been the man I thought he was. That night, as I lay in bed, the weight of Richard's words pressed down on me. This wasn't just a loveless marriage. It was a battlefield, and I was tired of being the only one fighting for peace. It was time to make a decision, one that would change the course of my life. The first rays of dawn brought a new resolve. I would no longer be a passive participant in this farce of a marriage. Richard had shown his true colors, and it was time for me to show mine. The following weeks were a blur of silent meals and cold stares. Richard's cruelty had unveiled a truth I had long tried to ignore. Our marriage was nothing but a hollow shell. Each evening, Richard would retreat into his world, often whispering into his phone or laughing at texts. The secrecy of his actions raised a red flag in my mind. Was he having an affair? Strangely, the thought didn't hurt as much as I expected. Perhaps it was because my own feelings for him had withered into nothingness. One night, as I lay awake, I heard Richard's muffled voice from the living room. Curiosity overtook me, and I tiptoed to the door, pressing my ear against it. "That old witch, she's just hoarding her wealth," he sneered. "Once she's gone, we'll be set for life." His words were like poison, seeping into my heart. He wasn't just betraying me, he was betraying his own mother. Claire, who had always been kind to us, didn't deserve such a fate. My heart ached for Claire. She was a strong woman, but the thought of her own son wishing her dead was too much to bear. I decided then that I needed to protect her, not just from Richard, but also from the cruel grip of greed. The next day I visited Claire. Her home was warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the coldness of my own. We sipped tea, and I watched her, the lines on her face telling stories of a life well lived. "Claire, you know you can always count on me, right?" I said, reaching across the table to hold her hand. "If you ever need anything, I'm here." Claire smiled, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "I know, Eleanor, you've always been more of a daughter to me than a daughter-in-law." Her words warmed my heart, but I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that lingered. I knew I had to act to somehow shield her from the greed and malice that had consumed Richard. That evening, as I lay in bed, I realized the extent of my isolation. My marriage was a facade, and the man I shared my home with was a stranger driven by selfishness. But amidst the darkness, a plan began to form in my mind, a plan to expose Richard's true intentions and protect Claire from his clutches. I would need to be careful, cunning even. It was time for the hunted to become the hunter. With each passing day, my resolve strengthened. Richard had underestimated me, and that was his biggest mistake. The stage was set for a reckoning, and I was ready to play my part. The days turned into weeks, each one passing with the heavy knowledge of Richard's betrayal. It was during one of these monotonous days that fate took a sharp, unexpected turn. I had just returned from work when I received a phone call that would change everything. The voice on the other end was Dr. Harper, Richard's physician. "Mrs. Williams, it's about your husband," Dr. Harper said, his tone grave. "We found something concerning in his latest tests. It's serious, and we need to discuss it with you." A cold dread settled in the pit of my stomach. What could be so serious that the doctor needed to talk to me first? I met with Dr. Harper the next day. The hospital's sterile walls and the antiseptic smell did nothing to calm my nerves. Dr. Harper's words were a shockwave that shook me to my core. "Your husband has a terminal condition," he said. "I'm sorry, but he has only about 6 months left." The news hit me like a physical blow. Despite everything, Richard was still my husband, the man I had once loved. The thought of him facing death alone was unexpectedly heartbreaking. But then a twisted idea crept into my mind. What if Richard never knew about his diagnosis? The thought was vindictive, petty even, but the seed was planted. I returned home, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Richard was his usual self, dismissive and absorbed in his phone. The irony of the situation was not lost on me. Here he was, wishing death upon others, unaware of his own impending doom. "Honey, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady. Richard barely glanced up. "What now, Eleanor? Can't you see I'm busy?" His indifference fueled my resolve. "It's important," I insisted. With a heavy sigh, he put down his phone. "Fine, what is it?" I took a deep breath. "The doctor called. He said you have 6 months to live." For a moment, Richard just stared at me, his face a mask of disbelief. Then a cruel smile twisted his lips. "6 months, huh?" he said, his voice laced with mockery. "Well, isn't that a twist of fate?" His reaction was devoid of fear or sadness. Instead, there was a perverse acceptance, as if he saw it as an opportunity to live without consequences. The following weeks were surreal. Richard began living as if each day was his last, squandering money on lavish items and extravagant nights out. He was like a man possessed, desperate to squeeze a lifetime into 6 months. And through it all, I played the part of the concerned wife, all the while keeping the dark secret that it was he, not I, who was living on borrowed time. As I watched Richard spiral into a reckless abandon, a part of me felt vindicated. This was his karma, a fitting end for a man who had shown nothing but selfishness and cruelty. But another part of me, a part I wasn't proud of, couldn't help but feel a twisted satisfaction in watching him unknowingly live out his last days in a delusion of immortality. It was a cruel game, one that I never imagined I'd play. But in this twisted tale of revenge, I was no longer just a victim. I was the architect of his downfall. As Richard's self-destruction escalated, a new character entered the stage of our twisted drama. It was a chilly evening in late autumn when she appeared at our doorstep, unannounced and unexpected. She was young, perhaps in her late 20s, with an air of confidence that belied her years. Her name was Annabelle. "May I help you?" I asked, eyeing her cautiously. "Mrs. Williams, I'm Annabelle. I think we need to talk about Richard," she said, her voice steady and composed. The pieces fell into place with a sinking feeling in my stomach. This was the woman Richard was having an affair with. The audacity of her showing up at my house was infuriating, yet I was intrigued by what she had to say. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. "Let's hear what you have to say." We sat in the living room, an awkward tension hanging in the air. Annabelle was the first to break the silence. "I know about Richard's condition," she began, "and I think it would be best for everyone if you two separated. Richard deserves to spend his last months happy." The suggestion was outrageous. Not only was Annabelle asking me to step aside for her affair, but she also believed the lie that Richard was the one dying. "And why would I do that?" I asked, my voice laced with disdain. "Because it's what Richard wants," she replied, her tone almost pleading. "He's suffering, and staying in this marriage is only making it worse." Her words were like a slap in the face. This woman, this intruder, had the audacity to speak of suffering while she played a part in destroying my marriage. "You speak of suffering," I said, my voice rising. "But what do you know of the years of neglect, the emotional abuse, the utter loneliness of a loveless marriage?" Annabelle's confidence seemed to waver, but she held her ground. "I love him, and I know he loves me too. We plan to be together once it's over." The situation was absurd. Here I was, speaking to my husband's mistress about his fictional terminal illness, a lie that had spiraled out of control. "Annabelle, you're living in a fantasy," I said coldly. "Richard isn't the man you think he is, and this affair, it's just a game to him." She shook her head, a look of disbelief on her face. "No, you're wrong. We have something real." I wanted to laugh, to shout, to tell her the truth about everything, but I held back, a part of me wanting to see how this farce would play out. "Believe what you will," I said, standing up. "But know this, Richard is not a man capable of love. He's a user, a manipulator, and sooner or later you'll see him for what he truly is." Annabelle stood up, her eyes betraying a hint of doubt. "I guess we'll see," she said before turning and walking out. As the door closed behind her, I was left with a sense of emptiness. This game of deception and revenge was taking a toll on me. I was caught in a web of my own making, and with each passing day the lines between right and wrong blurred a little more. But there was no turning back now. The stage was set, the players in place. All that was left was to see this twisted drama to its bitter end. The days following Annabelle's visit were a twisted dance of deception and revelation. Richard's extravagant lifestyle reached new heights, and his nights out became more frequent. It was as if he was trying to outrun the clock, to squeeze every last drop of life from his remaining days. 6 months since the doctor's call, the day of reckoning finally arrived. Richard came home late, as had become his norm, reeking of alcohol and arrogance. I sat in the living room, the lights dimmed, waiting for him. "Well, look at you, playing the waiting wife," Richard sneered as he stumbled in. "What's the occasion, counting down the days to my demise?" His words, meant to wound, barely scratched the surface of my resolve. I had grown immune to his barbs. "Actually, yes," I replied calmly. "It's been 6 months, Richard. Aren't you curious about how much time you have left?" Richard laughed, a hollow sound filled with denial. "I feel fine, Eleanor. Better than ever, in fact. Death can wait." The irony of his statement was almost amusing. He was so engrossed in his lie that he had lost touch with reality. "But there's something you should know," I continued, my voice steady. "It wasn't me who received that diagnosis 6 months ago. It was you." For a moment, there was silence. Richard's face, previously flushed with drunken confidence, paled. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The terminal illness, Richard. It's yours," I said, the words feeling heavy in the air. Richard's laughter was manic, tinged with hysteria. "You're lying. This is just some sick game you're playing." But as the reality of my words began to sink in, his facade crumbled. The man who stood before me was no longer the arrogant Richard I had known. He was scared, lost, a shadow of his former self. "You knew, all this time you knew?" he stammered, his voice breaking. "I did," I admitted, "and I watched as you squandered your days, thinking they were mine." The room was filled with a tense silence, the weight of years of lies and deception hanging heavy between us. In that moment, I saw Richard for what he was, a man consumed by his own selfish desires, now faced with the consequences of his actions. The next morning, Richard was gone. He had left without a word, leaving behind only the echo of his broken pride. I stood in the empty house, a sense of relief washing over me. The game was over. The lies were unraveled. In his quest for a life free of responsibility, Richard had lost everything. As I stood there, I realized that this was not a victory. There was no joy in watching a man fall from grace, even one as undeserving as Richard. What I felt was a profound sense of freedom, the chains of a loveless marriage finally broken. The drama, the revenge, it was all over. I was free to start anew, to find peace in a life unburdened by the weight of Richard's deceit. It was a fresh start, a chance to rediscover the person I had lost in the shadow of a failing marriage. And as I looked out the window at the rising sun, I knew that this was just the beginning. A new chapter in my life was waiting to be written, and for the first time in a long time I was ready to embrace it. In the weeks that followed Richard's departure, a profound sense of tranquility settled over the house. It was as if his absence had lifted a heavy veil, allowing light and air to fill spaces darkened by years of resentment and pain. I spent my days reacquainting myself with the simple pleasures of life, reading books I had long neglected, tending to the garden that had once been my sanctuary, and reconnecting with old friends. One afternoon, Claire visited me. She looked frail, but her eyes still sparkled with the same sharp intelligence and warmth. We sat in the garden, surrounded by blooming flowers and the gentle hum of life. "Eleanor, I heard about Richard," Claire began, her voice tinged with sadness. "I'm sorry it had to end this way." I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "It's all right, Claire, it was long overdue. We were both prisoners in that marriage. Now we're free." Claire nodded, a small smile gracing her lips. "You were always the daughter I never had, Eleanor. Richard's choices are his own. You shouldn't have to pay for his mistakes." Her words were a balm to my soul. In all the years of my tumultuous marriage, Claire had been a constant source of support and understanding. "Claire, I want to thank you," I said, my voice heavy with emotion, "for everything. You've been more of a family to me than anyone else." As we sat there, basking in the serenity of the garden, I realized how much of my life I had spent under Richard's shadow. But no more. I was my own person, with dreams and desires that extended beyond the confines of a loveless marriage. The next chapter of my life was just beginning, and I was determined to make it count. I would travel, write that book I always talked about, maybe even fall in love again. The possibilities were endless, and for the first time in a long time, I was excited about the future. As for Richard, I heard he had left town, chasing after some illusory freedom that would always be just out of reach. I felt no malice towards him, only a distant pity for a man who could never find contentment in what he had. Life, I had learned, was too short for regrets and bitterness. It was a gift to be cherished, a canvas to be painted with bold, bright colors. As Claire and I laughed and reminisced, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The drama, the pain, the revenge, it was all behind me. Ahead lay a path of my own making, a journey towards self-discovery and happiness. And as the sun set, casting a golden glow over the garden, I knew that this was just the beginning. A new chapter, a new life, a new Eleanor. In the hushed stillness of our bedroom, the words fell from Mark's lips like a guillotine's blade. "You should go to Hawaii by yourself." His voice, devoid of warmth, sliced through the air, severing the last thread of hope I clung to. My name is Emily Carter. At 30, I had believed I found stability in Mark Anderson, my partner of 6 years. But tonight, the mask fell, revealing the ugly truth. I stood there, a mix of disbelief and burgeoning fury coursing through me. Are you serious, Mark? My voice barely rose above a whisper. Our honeymoon is tomorrow, and you say this? Mark avoided my gaze, his fingers nervously drumming on the kitchen counter. I can't hide it anymore, Em. I've been seeing someone else. The confession hit me like a tidal wave, yet in the oddest way, it made sense. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the growing distance between us. How could I have been so blind? Who is she? The question escaped my lips, a part of me not wanting to know. It doesn't matter. What matters is I can't go with you. His nonchalant dismissal of our years together ignited a fire within me. The pain of betrayal was acute, but beneath it lay an ember of rage, fanned into life by his callousness. You're choosing her over me, over us? I fought to keep my voice steady. Mark sighed, a sound that spoke of annoyance rather than remorse. I guess I am. The starkness of his admission was a slap in the face. 6 years of love, companionship, and shared dreams, all reduced to nothing in a single conversation. Fine, I said, my voice laced with a coldness I didn't know I possessed. Enjoy your new life, Mark. I hope she's worth it. I turned on my heel and strode to our bedroom, each step fueled by a growing determination. If Mark thought he could discard me so easily, he was sorely mistaken. The pain he inflicted tonight wouldn't go unanswered. As I packed my suitcase, my mind raced. The honeymoon to Hawaii, a trip meant for two, now a solitary venture. A bitter laugh escaped me. Perhaps this was the universe's twisted way of granting me freedom. The night wore on, the silence of our apartment punctuated by the sound of my packing. Mark didn't come to the bedroom, nor did I expect him to. The man I loved or thought I loved was a stranger now. By dawn, my suitcase stood ready by the door, a symbolic severance of my ties with Mark. As I looked around the room, a room that once harbored dreams of a shared future, I felt a resolve solidify within me. Mark Anderson, you will regret this night. This isn't just a trip to Hawaii anymore. It's the beginning of your downfall. As the plane soared towards Hawaii, I, Emily Carter, sat gazing at the cloud-strewn sky, my thoughts a tumultuous storm. The seat beside me, meant for Mark, stood as a glaring reminder of the betrayal that had set me on this journey. In the confined space of the airplane, memories of Mark and me swirled around, mocking me with their sweetness turned sour. I remembered our first meeting, the laughter-filled dates, the day he proposed. Each memory, once cherished, now felt like shards of glass piercing my heart. But amidst the pain, a plan was taking shape. A plan not just of moving on, but of ensuring Mark felt a fraction of the pain he had inflicted on me. It was not just about revenge, it was about justice. The flight attendant's voice jolted me back to reality. Would you like anything to drink, ma'am? Just water, thank you, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. As she moved away, my phone buzzed. It was Mark. I see you're still going to Hawaii, his text read, a trace of accusation in his words. I typed back, my fingers steady. Yes, Mark, you made your choice, and I've made mine. You're being dramatic. We can talk about this when you're back, he replied, the audacity of his message igniting my anger further. There's nothing left to talk about. Enjoy your life with her. I hit send and turned off my phone. I wasn't going to let Mark disrupt my thoughts any longer. As the plane descended into Hawaii, a plan crystallized in my mind. I would use this trip not just for healing, but to set the stage for Mark's comeuppance. He would learn that actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences strike where it hurts the most. I checked into the hotel, a beautiful beachfront property that should have been the setting for our honeymoon. Now it was the backdrop for the unraveling of my former life and the weaving of a new narrative. That evening, as the Hawaiian sunset painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, I sat on the beach, my phone in hand. It was time to initiate my plan. I began with a simple post on social media, a picture of the sunset with a caption that hinted at new beginnings and unexpected turns. The post was ambiguous, but I knew it would stir curiosity among our friends and family. I wanted Mark to feel the eyes of our shared world on him, questioning, doubting. It was the first step in showing him that his actions would not remain hidden in the shadows. I spent the next few days exploring Hawaii, each activity a bittersweet experience. Kayaking, hiking, lounging on the beach, I did it all, documenting my solo journey on social media, my posts a mix of subtle jabs and overt displays of my newfound independence. One evening, as I dined alone in a cozy restaurant, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Mark's sister, Laura. "Emily, are you okay? Your posts seem off. Is everything all right with you and Mark?" I stared at the message, a part of me feeling guilty for worrying her. But this was a necessary part of my plan. Mark's facade had to crumble, and it had to start from within his circle. "Hey, Laura, thanks for checking in. Let's just say life has thrown me some unexpected curves. I'll explain more when I'm back. Hope you're well." As I sent the message, I knew it would set the rumor mill in motion. Laura, caring and concerned, would undoubtedly share her worries with others. Mark's betrayal, once a painful stab in my heart, was now the weapon I wielded with precision. In the days that followed, I felt a transformation within me. With each post, each step I took alone in Hawaii, I was shedding the skin of the woman who loved and trusted Mark Anderson. In her place stood someone stronger, fiercer, and ready to ensure that karma was not just a concept, but a reality that Mark would soon face. The Hawaiian sun cast its warm glow over the ocean, a stark contrast to the cold resolve in my heart. Emily Carter, once a believer in fairy tale endings, now played the lead in a tale of deceit and retribution. As I sipped my coffee at a seaside cafe, my phone buzzed with a text from Mark. His words, filled with feigned concern, only fueled my resolve. "Emily, we need to talk. I'm worried about you." With a wry smile, I texted back, "There's nothing to worry about, Mark. I'm enjoying Hawaii, just like you're probably enjoying your time with her." His quick response, laced with frustration, didn't surprise me. "This is ridiculous, Em. You're blowing this out of proportion." "Am I?" I typed, my fingers moving deftly across the screen. "Or maybe you're just beginning to realize the consequences of your actions." I hit send and turned off my phone, unwilling to let Mark's words disrupt the plan I had meticulously crafted. The cafe's serene ambiance provided the perfect backdrop for plotting my next move. It was time for Mark to feel the sting of betrayal, just as I had. Over the next few days, I executed my plan with precision. I contacted a lawyer to start the legal separation process and gathered evidence of Mark's infidelity. Every step I took was a calculated move to dismantle the life we had built together, piece by piece. One evening, as I strolled along the beach, I paused to watch a couple laughing together by the water's edge. A pang of sadness hit me, but it was quickly replaced by a surge of empowerment. I was no longer the victim in this story. I was the architect of my own destiny. I made my way back to the hotel and logged onto my laptop. It was time to take my plan public. I drafted a post, a beautifully worded piece that spoke of new beginnings and the courage to walk away from what no longer served me. The post was cryptic, yet its underlying message was clear. I was moving on from Mark, and I was doing it with grace and strength. Within minutes of hitting post, the responses flooded in. Words of encouragement, support, and even curiosity about what had prompted such a change. Among the sea of comments, one caught my eye. It was from a mutual friend, asking if everything was okay between me and Mark. I replied, my words carefully chosen to fuel the speculation without revealing too much. Life has a way of revealing truths we never expected. Mark and I are figuring things out. As I closed my laptop, a sense of satisfaction washed over me. The seeds of doubt were planted, and soon they would sprout, entangling Mark in a web of his own making. The following day, as I prepared to leave Hawaii, I felt a mix of emotions. The island had been a sanctuary, a place where I rediscovered my strength, but it was also the starting point of my journey towards justice. As the plane ascended, leaving the Hawaiian shores behind, I looked out the window, my thoughts clear and focused. Mark's betrayal had set me on this path, but it was my own resilience that would see me through. I was returning home, not as the broken-hearted fiancée, but as a woman reborn from the ashes of her past. Mark Anderson's day of reckoning was just beginning. Back in my hometown, the familiarity of the streets did little to soothe the tumult in my heart. The plane's descent had been a metaphorical landing back into the reality of my shattered life. But Emily Carter was no longer the same woman who had boarded that flight to Hawaii. She was now a woman on a mission. The first thing I did upon returning was to visit my lawyer. The office, with its sterile, professional ambiance, was a stark reminder of the legal battle that lay ahead. But I was ready. "Miss Carter, I've reviewed the evidence you sent over. We have a strong case for infidelity," the lawyer stated, his tone clinical. I nodded, my resolve unwavering. I want to ensure that the divorce settlement reflects the gravity of his betrayal. "We'll do everything we can," he assured me. As I left the office, my phone rang. It was Mark. His name on the screen no longer stirred feelings of love but of disdain. "Emily, where the hell are you?" Mark's voice was laced with anger and confusion. "I'm taking care of things, Mark." "Something you should have thought of before cheating," I retorted, my voice calm, yet icy. "This is crazy, Em. You're overreacting," he shot back. "Overreacting? No, Mark. I am reacting appropriately to a man who thought he could have his cake and eat it too," I said, my words sharp. There was a pause, and I could almost hear the cogs turning in his deceitful mind. "Let's just talk about this. We can fix it," he pleaded, a note of desperation creeping into his voice. "There's nothing left to fix, Mark. You broke it beyond repair," I said and hung up. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. I reached out to our mutual friends, subtly revealing the truth behind our separation. The news spread like wildfire, painting Mark as the villain he was. I also took to social media, posting pictures and updates that showcased my newfound independence. Each post was a carefully crafted jab at Mark's ego, a public display of my resilience and his downfall. But the true masterstroke came when I decided to sell the items we had bought together. The car, the furniture, the little trinkets that symbolized our life as a couple, all were put up for sale. It was a clear message to Mark. Our shared life was being dismantled, piece by piece. The day Mark found out about the sale, his reaction was explosive. He called, his voice a mixture of rage and disbelief. "You're selling our things?" "What the hell, Emily?" "They're my things, Mark, and I'm reclaiming my life, one piece at a time," I replied, my tone unwavering. "This is insane. You're destroying everything we had," he accused. "We had nothing, Mark. You saw to that when you decided to cheat," I said, and ended the call. As I lay in bed that night, the silence of my apartment was a stark reminder of the solitude that now defined my life. But there was also a sense of empowerment, a realization that with each passing day, I was moving further away from the pain and closer to a future of my own making. Mark Anderson had thought he could break me, but in his betrayal, he had unwittingly forged a stronger, more determined Emily Carter, a woman who would not rest until she had her due. The morning sun cast a golden glow over the city as I, Emily Carter, walked through the streets with a newfound purpose. The air felt different, charged with the electricity of impending change. Today was not just another day. It was the day I would set the final act of my plan into motion. I arrived at a quaint cafe, the perfect spot to meet with an old friend and a crucial ally in my scheme against Mark. As I sipped my coffee, waiting, I reflected on how far I had come. The pain of betrayal still lingered, but it was now overshadowed by a fierce determination. "Emily, it's been too long," greeted Lisa, a mutual friend of Mark and me, and unknowingly, a key player in my plan. "Lisa, thank you for meeting me," I said, my voice tinged with feigned distress. "What's going on, Em? You've seemed off lately," Lisa inquired, her concern evident. I took a deep breath, ready to spin the narrative. "It's Mark. I found out he's been unfaithful. I'm devastated, Lisa." The shock on Lisa's face was genuine. "Mark? But he always seemed so devoted to you." "That's what I thought too, but he's been seeing someone else behind my back," I said, letting a tear slip for effect. Lisa reached out, her hand clasping mine. "I'm so sorry, Emily. How can I help?" "Just be there for me, Lisa, and maybe keep this between us. I don't want to cause a scene. I just need support right now," I said, knowing full well that Lisa's nature wouldn't allow her to stay silent. "Of course, Emily. You can count on me," she assured me. As we parted ways, I knew Lisa would spread the news, igniting the flames of my revenge. She was the perfect unwitting messenger, her social connections a network through which the story of Mark's betrayal would travel fast. Over the next few days, I watched as the effects of my carefully crafted narrative began to unfold. Our mutual friends started to distance themselves from Mark, their social media interactions with him dwindling. Whispers of his infidelity spread, tainting his reputation. Meanwhile, I I continued to present myself as the wronged yet dignified ex-fiancé. My social media posts were a blend of subtle hints at my personal turmoil and showcases of my newfound independence. Each post was a calculated move in the intricate chess game I was playing with Mark's facade. Then came the day when I learned that Mark had been passed over for a promotion at work, a direct result of the rumors that now clouded his professional image. It was a significant blow, one that would have been unthinkable just a few months ago. But now it was a reality, a testament to the power of reputation and the consequences of one's actions. As I sat in my apartment that evening, my phone rang. It was Mark, his voice a cocktail of anger and desperation. "Emily, what the hell have you been telling people? My life is falling apart." "Is it, Mark? Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to betray me," I responded, my voice calm but firm. "You're ruining me, Emily. This isn't fair," he protested. "Fair? You want to talk about fair? You cheated, Mark. You made your bed, and now you have to lie in it," I said. The call ended with Mark's frustrated silence, a clear sign that my message had hit home. I lay back on my couch, a sense of vindication filling me. This was more than revenge. This was justice. Mark was finally reaping what he had sown, and I, Emily Carter, was the architect of his downfall. The cool evening breeze wafted through my apartment, carrying with it a sense of triumph. The walls, once a symbol of shared dreams with Mark, now stood as a testament to my newfound strength. I, Emily Carter, had turned the tables, and the sweet taste of revenge was more satisfying than I had imagined. As I poured myself a glass of wine, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was Mark, his name flashing on the screen like a beacon of his desperation. "Emily, we need to talk. This has gone too far," he said, his voice strained. I took a sip of my wine, savoring its richness. "Talk? What's there to talk about, Mark? You made your choices, and now you're facing the consequences. You've destroyed my reputation, Emily. My friends, my job, everything is falling apart because of these rumors," he accused, his voice laced with bitterness. "Rumors? Mark, the truth has a way of coming out. You can't hide from what you've done," I replied coolly. "This isn't you, Emily. This vindictiveness, it's not you," he pleaded. I laughed, a short, sharp sound. "You'd be surprised, Mark. Betrayal changes people. Laugh, you should know. You're the expert." The line went silent for a moment. "I'll make it right, Emily. Please, let's just put this behind us," he begged. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see it. "It's too late for that, Mark. You've shown your true colors, and I've shown mine. This is the end of our story." With that, I ended the call, cutting off any further pleas from Mark. The sense of empowerment was exhilarating. For too long, I had been the victim of his deceit, but now I was the author of his downfall. Over the following days, I watched as Mark's social circle shrunk, his friends distancing themselves as the truth of his infidelity spread. His professional life, too, suffered, with the missed promotion being just the beginning of his career troubles. But the most satisfying part was yet to come. Through a mutual acquaintance, I learned that Mark's affair partner had left him, unable to handle the public scrutiny and the reality of being with a man of tarnished reputation. Mark was left alone, a pariah in the life he had chosen over me. As I sat in my living room, the walls no longer felt oppressive. They were my sanctuary, a place where I had rebuilt myself from the ashes of a broken heart. I had taken back control of my life, and in doing so had ensured that Mark felt the full weight of his betrayal. The journey had been painful, fraught with moments of doubt and anguish. But as I looked back, I realized it was necessary. It had led me to a place of strength and independence, a place where I could finally close the chapter on Mark Anderson and look forward to a future of my own making. Emily Carter, once the betrayed fiancée, was now a woman reborn, a woman who had faced her demons and emerged victorious. The sweet taste of revenge lingered, a reminder that sometimes justice is served not in the courts, but through the actions of those who refuse to be broken. The journey of revenge had reached its end, but for me, a new chapter was just beginning. Sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee, I reflected on the transformation that had taken place. The pain of Mark's betrayal, once a consuming fire, had now dwindled to a mere flicker in the story of my life. My phone rang, breaking the morning's tranquility. It was a call from Laura, Mark's sister. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Emily, I I heard about everything. Laura's voice was tinged with sadness. I'm sorry for what Mark did to you. I sighed softly. Thank you, Laura. It's been a tough journey, but I think it was necessary. Mark's a mess, Emily. He's lost so much, his friends, his reputation. I never thought he'd be capable of something like this, she said, her voice filled with disbelief. I didn't either, Laura, but we often don't see the true colors of a person until we're forced to, I replied, my tone resolute. There was a pause filled with unspoken words and shared pain. I hope you find happiness, Emily. You deserve it, Laura finally said. Thank you, Laura. I wish the same for you, I replied, ending the call with a sense of closure. As the day progressed, I busied myself with work and plans for the future. The lessons I had learned from my ordeal with Mark had reshaped my perspective on life and love. Trust, once freely given, would now be earned, and the scars of betrayal, while healed, would always serve as a reminder of my strength. My social media, once a battleground of subtle jabs and public displays of independence, now showcased a woman embracing her new life. Photos of my travels, moments of professional success, and gatherings with true friends painted the picture of a life rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal. In the weeks that followed, I heard snippets of Mark's struggles through mutual acquaintances. His attempts to salvage his reputation were met with cold shoulders, and his professional life continued to suffer. The man who once held my heart was now a mere shadow, a cautionary tale of the consequences of infidelity and deceit. But as I looked out of my window, watching the city bustle below, I realized that Mark Anderson's story was no longer mine to dwell on. I had moved on, leaving him and the pain he caused in the past. I turned my gaze to the horizon, where the sky met the cityscape in a promise of endless possibilities. Emily Carter, once a victim, was now a victor, her spirit unbroken, and her heart open to the adventures that lay ahead. The journey of revenge had ended, but my journey of self-discovery and growth was just beginning. And as I stepped out into the world, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I had the strength and resilience to face them head-on. I can't do this anymore, Nathan. You've cheated again. Let's just get divorced. My voice was steady, but inside I was crumbling. The living room of our modest home, once a sanctuary of love and laughter, felt cold and uninviting. Nathan stood there, his back to the fading sunset outside the window. His silhouette was as hard and unyielding as the man himself. Divorce? Really, Elise? After all this time? Nathan's voice was laced with sarcasm. He turned to face me, a smirk playing on his lips, the same lips that whispered sweet nothings and later lies. Yes, Nathan, 4 years of marriage and all I've earned are lies and betrayal. Even your parents agree with me. I felt a surge of courage, bolstered by the unexpected support from his parents. I saw their disapproving glances at their son, their sympathetic looks towards me. Nathan's face hardened. My parents? Ha! What do they know about our marriage? They know enough. My words were a whisper, but they sliced through the tension in the room. Nathan's smirk vanished, replaced by a sneer. Fine, Elise, you want a divorce? You'll get it. But remember, you're leaving with nothing. No alimony, no child support. You can take my parents and those brats with you. His words stung, but I stood my ground. I don't care about your conditions, Nathan. All I know is I can't be your wife any longer. He scoffed. You think you can survive without me? You're nothing without me, Elise. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I'd rather have nothing than live a lie with you. Nathan stepped closer, his face inches from mine. You know, being cheated on. Maybe it's also the fault of the person being cheated on. Ever thought of that, Elise? His words were a slap across my face. I recoiled, not from his proximity, but from the venom in his voice. The Nathan I once knew, the man I fell in love with, was gone. In his place stood a stranger, cold and cruel. I've grown tired of your whining and your pathetic face. You know what? A good-looking divorced man is quite the catch. His voice dripped with arrogance. I stared at him, my heart racing with a mix of fear and anger. Is this really who you are, Nathan? He shrugged. Take it or leave it, Elise. I don't care. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I'm leaving, Nathan, and I'm taking our daughters with me. They don't deserve a father like you. Nathan laughed, a hollow, mocking sound. Good luck, Elise. You'll come crawling back. They always do. But I knew I wouldn't. I turned my back on Nathan, on our life together, and walked away. The door closed behind me with a finality that echoed in my heart. It was over. The battle was just beginning, but I had taken the first step towards freedom. As I walked away, I realized this was not just the end. It was a new beginning. The morning after I left Nathan, I found myself at his parents' house. The air was thick with unspoken words as I sat at their kitchen table, my twin daughters playing quietly at my feet. Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton, Nathan's parents, exchanged a glance full of sorrow and regret. "Elise, we need to tell you something about Nathan," Mr. Hamilton began, his voice heavy with unease. "Something we should have shared a long time ago." I nodded, bracing myself for more revelations. "Nathan has always been, well, charming to women. Since high school," Mrs. Hamilton interjected, her voice trembling. "He would date multiple girls, juggling them without a care." My heart sank. The man I married, the father of my children, was a habitual cheater. It wasn't just a lapse in judgment, it was a pattern. "We thought he changed when he met you," Mr. Hamilton continued, his voice filled with disappointment. "But we were wrong. We're so sorry, Elise." I felt a mix of anger and sadness, but mostly I felt betrayed. Not just by Nathan, but by everyone who knew and said nothing. "Why didn't you tell me?" The question came out as a whisper, more to myself than to them. We hoped he had changed," Mrs. Hamilton said, tears in her eyes, "but we were wrong. We failed you both." The revelation was a bitter pill to swallow. Nathan's parents, whom I had come to love and respect, had kept this crucial piece of information from me. Yet their remorse was genuine. "Thank you for telling me now," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "But I need to think about what to do next." As I left their house, my mind was racing. Nathan's betrayal wasn't just a one-time thing. It was a part of who he was. And I had been blind to it all. In the following days, I poured my energy into my job search. With a renewed sense of purpose, I landed a position at a marketing firm. It wasn't just about financial independence. It was about reclaiming my identity. I also started gathering evidence of Nathan's infidelity. Every receipt, every late-night call, every unexplained absence. I meticulously documented everything. If Nathan thought I was going to walk away quietly, he was sorely mistaken. The final straw came a week later when I discovered another love letter in Nathan's belongings, filled with passionate declarations. It was like a punch to the gut. Confronting him wasn't an option. I needed a different approach, an approach that would hit him where it hurt the most. I called my lawyer and set the wheels in motion for the divorce. Nathan would learn the hard way that betrayal comes with a price, and I was going to make sure he paid it in full. I sat across from my lawyer, Mr. Jacobs, in his stark, unadorned office. The papers in front of me were a tangible representation of my newfound resolve. "Everything's in order," Mr. Jacobs said, adjusting his glasses. "Once Nathan is served these papers, the process begins. Are you ready for this?" I nodded, feeling a mix of apprehension and determination. "I am. Nathan needs to understand that he can't just walk over people without consequences." Mr. Jacobs gave me an understanding look. "And the evidence of his affairs?" "I have them," I replied, handing him a folder thick with documentation. Photos, messages, receipts, everything that painted the sordid picture of Nathan's betrayal. "Good. This will strengthen your case for alimony and child support. It's not just about the money, Elise. It's about holding him accountable." As I left the lawyer's office, I felt a sense of empowerment. I wasn't just a victim of Nathan's infidelity. I was a woman taking control of her life. The following weeks were a whirlwind. I juggled my new job, caring for my daughters, and the divorce proceedings. It was exhausting, but with each passing day, I felt stronger, more capable. Then came the day Nathan was served the divorce papers. His reaction was immediate and explosive. He called me, his voice dripping with anger and disbelief. "Are you out of your mind, Elise? You think you can take me to the cleaners and get away with it?" I held the phone away from my ear, his tirade a distant, angry buzz. When he finally paused for breath, I spoke calmly. "It's not about revenge, Nathan. It's about fairness. You broke our marriage vows, and now you have to face the consequences." "You won't get a dime from me," he spat. "We'll see," I replied, and ended the call. That night, I lay awake, thinking about the path ahead. It was going to be a tough battle, but I was ready for it. Nathan had underestimated me, and that was his biggest mistake. I thought about my daughters, sleeping peacefully in the next room, They deserved a better life, a life free from the shadow of their father's deceit. And I was going to give it to them, no matter what it took. Nathan's true colors were showing, and everyone was going to see them. The charming, handsome man they knew was just a facade. Underneath lay a man capable of deceit and betrayal, and I was going to expose him for who he really was. The game had just begun, and I was playing to win. The courtroom was cold and sterile, the air charged with tension. I sat rigidly, my lawyer beside me as we waited for the judge to enter. Across the room, Nathan sat with his lawyer, his expression one of smug confidence. As the judge entered and proceedings began, I felt a knot in my stomach. This was it, the moment of truth. Nathan Taylor, the evidence presented by your wife indicates a pattern of infidelity and financial irresponsibility, the judge began, his voice stern. How do you respond to these allegations? Nathan stood, his posture relaxed, almost dismissive. Your Honor, my wife is exaggerating. Sure, I might have had a few indiscretions, but who hasn't? She's blowing this whole thing out of proportion. His cavalier attitude infuriated me. He still didn't grasp the severity of his actions. Mr. Taylor, this is a court of law, not a social club. I advise you to take these proceedings seriously, the judge warned. As the hearing progressed, Nathan's facade began to crumble. Each piece of evidence my lawyer presented seemed to hit him like a physical blow. Photos, messages, bank statements, the truth laid bare for all to see. When it was my turn to speak, I stood, my hands trembling slightly. Your Honor, I entered this marriage believing in love and trust. What I got instead was deception and heartache. Nathan's actions have not only broken our family, but have also set a poor example for our children. Nathan rolled his eyes, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed by the judge. The impact of his actions goes beyond just emotional pain. Financially, I was left in a vulnerable position, having to start from scratch while caring for our daughters. I seek fair compensation, not out of spite, but out of necessity, I concluded, my voice steady. The judge nodded, making notes. Thank you, Mrs. Taylor. Your statement has been noted. As the hearing ended, Nathan approached me, his expression a mix of anger and disbelief. You're going to regret this, Elise. You've made an enemy out of me. I met his gaze squarely. No, Nathan, you did that all by yourself. Leaving the courtroom, I felt a sense of closure. This was more than just a legal battle. It was a fight for my dignity and the future of my children. Nathan had shown his true colors, and now he would face the consequences. The drama was far from over, but I had taken a significant step in reclaiming my life, and I was ready for whatever came next. The divorce settlement was more than just a legal victory. It was a moral one. Nathan had been ordered to pay a substantial amount in alimony and child support, a decision that left him seething. A few days after the ruling, I received a call from Nathan. His voice was a mix of anger and desperation. You think you've won, Elise? You think you can just take my money and run? You've ruined me. His words were meant to intimidate me, but I felt an inner strength that hadn't been there before. This isn't about winning or losing, Nathan. It's about taking responsibility. You made your choices, and now you're facing the consequences. You'll pay for this. I'll make sure of it, he threatened. Threats won't change anything, Nathan. It's time for you to start facing reality, I replied before ending the call. In the weeks that followed, Nathan tried various tactics to evade his financial obligations. But with the law on my side and a determined lawyer, we countered each attempt. Meanwhile, word of Nathan's actions and the divorce began to spread. His reputation, once that of a charming and successful businessman, was now tarnished. He faced scrutiny and judgment from those he once considered friends and colleagues. As I rebuilt my life, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Nathan was finally experiencing the fallout of his actions. His once carefree life was now filled with the repercussions of his choices. But it wasn't just about Nathan's downfall. This was also about my rise from the ashes of a broken marriage. I was building a new life for myself and my daughters, a life free from lies and betrayal. One evening, as I put my daughters to bed, my younger daughter looked up at me with her big, innocent eyes. Mommy, are you happy now? Her question caught me off guard, but then I smiled. Yes, sweetheart, I am. We're going to be just fine. As I kissed them goodnight, I felt a sense of peace. The storm had passed, and in its wake, it had left a newfound strength and resilience in me. Nathan's downfall was a harsh reminder of the price of deceit, but it was also a testament to the power of standing up for oneself. I had fought for justice, not just for me, but for my children as well. The chapter of Nathan was closed, but a new chapter was beginning for us, one filled with hope and the promise of a brighter future. The world outside my window seemed brighter, the air fresher. It had been 6 months since the divorce was finalized, and life had taken on a new rhythm. My daughters were thriving, happy and adjusted, and I had found fulfillment in my job and newfound independence. One afternoon, as I sat in my office, my phone buzzed. It was a call from Nathan. Hesitant, I answered. "Elise, you've destroyed my life." Nathan's voice was frantic, a stark contrast to his once cool demeanor. I sighed. "Nathan, you did that yourself. I just stopped accepting it." "I lost my job because of the scandal, Elise. Because of you." His voice cracked with desperation. "That was the result of your actions, Nathan, not mine," I replied firmly. "You think you're better off without me? You think you've won?" His words were laced with bitterness. "I didn't do this to win, Nathan. I did it to survive, to protect our children. This isn't a game, it's life, and it's time you took responsibility for yours." There was silence on the other end, and then he hung up. I stared at the phone for a moment, reflecting on how far I had come. In the months following the divorce, rumors of Nathan's behavior had circulated. His charming facade had crumbled, revealing the man beneath. He had lost his job, his reputation, and much of his social circle. The consequences of his actions were catching up to him. But for me, life was moving in a positive direction. I had reconnected with old friends, made new ones, and my relationship with my daughters had never been stronger. We had created a new family unit, one built on love, trust, and respect. As I left work that day, I thought about the journey I had been on, from the pain and betrayal to the fight for justice and the rebuilding of my life. It had been a difficult path, but one that led to growth and empowerment. Nathan's downfall was a harsh lesson in accountability. For me, it was a reminder that no matter how dark things seem, there is always a path to light. I picked up my daughters from school, their laughter and chatter filling the car. As we drove home, I realized that this was what true happiness felt like. It wasn't just about overcoming Nathan, it was about rediscovering myself and building a better future for my family. The road ahead was uncertain, but I faced it with a sense of hope and optimism. The chapter of Nathan was closed, but our story was just beginning. A story of resilience, strength, and the unbreakable bond of a mother and her children.